Hollywood's perfect couples are falling apart faster than anyone expected, and the whispers behind closed doors are getting louder. From Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' strange silence to Nicole Kidman's late-night breakdown, the cracks are showing in the golden facades. But the real question? What's causing all this chaos, and who's next to be exposed? Tonight, we're diving deep into the latest wave of Hollywood blind items, the kind that reveal what publicists won't and insiders can't stop talking about. For years, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have been Hollywood's ultimate PR masterpiece. Funny, fashionable, family-oriented. But lately, insiders say something about that picture-perfect image feels off. It started quietly, missing appearances, interviews that used to drip with playful sarcasm, now replaced with awkward distance. Blake's once overactive social media presence, nearly silent. And while fans thought it was just a break from the spotlight, those close to the couple whisper it's something far deeper, a cold war between two people who've built an empire on being perfect together. Behind the scenes, things reportedly started shifting around the time of It Ends With Us, the film that threw Blake into headlines not for her performance, but for the lawsuits, leaks, and legal mudslinging that followed. Ryan, once her loudest cheerleader, pulled back. He stayed out of the narrative, a rare move for someone who's usually online, quick with a sarcastic jab or a viral comment. And insiders say that silence speaks volumes. A close friend allegedly described their situation as two brands trapped in a marriage. Both know that the Reynolds Lively name is worth millions, from endorsements to their Mint Mobile and Betty Buzz ventures, and neither wants to be the one to break it. But the tension is palpable. When the cameras stop rolling, sources say their conversations have turned from playful to purely transactional. Blake's legal troubles with Justin Baldoni have made her unpredictable, while Ryan's focus on expanding his media empire has made him emotionally unavailable. Hollywood insiders are comparing their situation to another famous implosion, one that also started with public perfection and ended with legal disaster. Because when a brand couple begins to crack, it's never just personal. It's professional, financial, and sometimes political. And just as the whispers around Blake and Ryan grow, another couple, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, seems to be walking dangerously close to the same edge. For years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban have been the poster couple of grace, loyalty, and resilience, a glamorous blend of Hollywood royalty and Nashville heart. But lately, their image has started to flicker under the bright lights. People have noticed the tension. The red carpet smiles have gotten tighter, the eye contact shorter, and behind the scenes, whispers of emotional distance are swirling like wildfire through the entertainment world. It began subtly. Keith traveling more often, performing alone, spending nights in different cities. Meanwhile, Nicole, ever the consummate actress, began appearing at events solo, often looking radiant but detached, her focus more on work than on her personal life. But then came what insiders now call the breakdown moment, a scene that allegedly took place at a private after-party in Beverly Hills, following a film screening earlier this year. According to multiple sources, Nicole was seen in tears after an argument with Keith that turned unusually public. He reportedly left early while she stayed behind, trying to keep her composure as friends closed ranks around her. One witness said, "It wasn't screaming or chaos, and it was worse. It was that quiet kind of heartbreak that happens when someone you love becomes a stranger right in front of you, and then came the most haunting part. What Nicole reportedly said to a close confidant after that night. I spent years playing a role. I don't know who I am without it." Those words have sent shockwaves through those who know her best. Because for Nicole, performance has always been her power, both on-screen and off. Insiders claim the root of the tension isn't infidelity, but identity. Keith, always drawn to simplicity and authenticity, reportedly feels disconnected from the Hollywood facade that Nicole has to maintain to survive. Meanwhile, Nicole, once fiercely private, has grown increasingly frustrated that she's expected to play the graceful wife, while her world quietly unravels. And then, in true Hollywood fashion, the story gets darker. An anonymous blind item posted on Dumois hinted that a legendary actress with a famous musician husband had recently been spotted at a private retreat in Montana. Not for vacation, but emotional recovery. The item didn't name names, but within hours, fans connected the dots. The timelines matched, the whispers aligned, and speculation went into overdrive. The narrative has since shifted. This isn't just a story about a marriage under pressure. It's about the weight of perfection in a world that thrives on illusion. Nicole and Keith aren't the only ones feeling it. Insiders say this kind of quiet implosion is spreading through Hollywood like a virus. Power couples are breaking under the strain of PR contracts, private NDAs, and the pressure to maintain curated happiness. And here's where the web begins to connect. Because the same insiders whispering about Nicole's breakdown are the ones saying that Blake Lively's legal disaster and the potential exposure of private texts has Hollywood's elite in panic mode. No one wants to be next, because if the truth gets out about what's really happening behind the red carpets and smiling press tours, it won't just be Blake or Nicole who fall. It'll be the entire image machine of celebrity perfection itself. The ripple effect of these celebrity implosions didn't stop with Blake Lively or Nicole Kidman. It spread like a contagion through the upper tiers of fame, where every image, every smile, and every friendship is calculated to perfection. And the moment those cracks started showing, every PR team in Hollywood went into quiet crisis mode. Let's start with Taylor Swift, because when she moves, the industry trembles. For years, Taylor has mastered control over her narrative, her music, and even her silence. But insiders say that the legal drama swirling around Blake Lively, once one of her closest friends, has left Taylor caught in the crossfire. Multiple blind items have hinted that Taylor's private communications might have been mentioned in sealed legal documents connected to the It Ends With Us lawsuit. And while no official confirmation exists, the rumor alone has sent her inner circle scrambling. Behind the scenes, publicists reportedly had emergency meetings to manage the fallout if those messages were ever leaked. And the whispers? They claim Taylor's relationship with Blake has been paused. No shade, no public statement, just distance. Fans noticed that Blake and Ryan weren't at any of Taylor's recent tour stops, and that silence, in Taylor's world, says everything. Then there's Meghan Markle, another celebrity powerhouse with deep PR roots. Sources close to her team claim she's been watching these Hollywood meltdowns very carefully, and not just for gossip. Meghan and Prince Harry have spent years rebuilding their image after the royal exit, but the current Hollywood turbulence could easily pull them into its undertow. One recent blind item described a California power couple being advised to lay low after private communications between multiple A-list friends became potentially exposable in a legal discovery process. Again, no names, but the speculation pointed directly at the Sussexes' circle. Meghan, reportedly furious about the association, has doubled down on her media control. Every appearance, every headline, every whisper, filtered through a brand protection lens that would make even old-school Hollywood publicists jealous. The irony? The more she tries to manage the narrative, the louder the noise gets. But here's where it all connects: the PR web that ties these stars together. For years, the same elite agencies have managed overlapping A-listers, from Swift to Lively, from Kidman to Markle, crafting perfect public images designed to protect billion-dollar brands. And now, one legal battle, one subpoena, one leaked text could pull that entire network down. Insiders call it the glass wall problem. Everyone can see the perfection, but no one knows what's actually holding it up. And once the first crack forms, the illusion starts to shatter. One publicist, speaking off the record, said, "It's not about who's guilty or innocent. It's about control. Once you lose control of your story, you lose everything in this town." And that's exactly what's happening. The control is slipping. The power players, the A-list faces that once seemed untouchable, are being dragged into the same messy web they once paid millions to avoid. The fallout is spreading faster than anyone can contain it, and now, even the most calculated public figures are being forced into reaction mode. Because when image is currency, exposure is bankruptcy, and the house of cards built on red carpet smiles and Instagram-perfect lives may finally be collapsing under its own weight. Behind the velvet curtains of Beverly Hills and the tinted windows of black SUVs, Hollywood is in full-blown panic. What started as a few isolated scandals, Blake Lively's court troubles, Nicole Kidman's emotional unraveling, Taylor Swift's cautious silence, has now snowballed into what insiders are calling a crisis of image. The illusion of invincibility is breaking down, and the people who built that illusion are scrambling to pick up the pieces before the public realizes how much of it was manufactured. Multiple public relations firms, like the ones that handle the biggest names in entertainment, have reportedly launched containment protocols. That means old NDAs are being quietly rewritten, private messages scrubbed, and potential leaks monitored by cybersecurity teams working overtime. Some agencies have even gone as far as to hire external crisis consultants, not to rebuild reputations, but to prevent catastrophic exposure. And yet, the whispers keep leaking out. A series of anonymous tips began circulating through private celebrity gossip channels, alleging that several major studios are sitting on information about their A-list stars that could change the entire perception of Hollywood's elite. According to one insider, if even half of what's in those files got out, you'd see divorces, lawsuits, and brand collapses within days. But here's the twist. This isn't just about scandal, it's about control. The real power in Hollywood has never been about who's on the screen. It's about who controls the narrative off the screen. The managers, the publicists, the legal fixers, they're the ones who decide who's adored, who's destroyed, and who simply disappears. And right now, their empire is under siege. Social media has changed the rules. In the old days, a studio could kill a rumor with a phone call. Now, a blind item posted at midnight can ignite 1 million tweets by morning. A single leaked message can undo a decade of image crafting. And for stars like Blake Lively, whose court filings might expose private conversations with other celebrities, that risk is existential. The PR industry has never faced a moment like this, where even silence can be weaponized. In the past, scandals like these would stay hidden behind lawyers and NDAs. But today, the leaks move faster than any legal strategy. Publicists can't spin screenshots. Lawyers can't seal whispers. And every time a star tries to clarify the narrative, it only feeds the fire. Now the panic has reached the top. Executives are reportedly warning their clients to prepare for exposure. That means everything from deleted texts and private recordings to internal memos might be on the verge of surfacing, so especially as multiple ongoing legal battles open the door to subpoenas and discovery orders. It's not just gossip anymore. It's evidence. Insiders describe it as a Cold War, one fought not with headlines, but with silence, money, and control. Some stars are retreating completely, stepping out of public life to preserve what's left of their privacy. Others are quietly switching PR firms, fearing that the people who once protected them may be sitting on secrets too valuable to keep quiet forever. And here's the part that no one in Hollywood wants to admit: the entire system depends on the illusion that these people are happy, powerful, and untouchable. But as one veteran producer put it, once the curtain drops and the public sees what really goes on, it's over. The industry won't collapse, it'll mutate. And some of its biggest names will be gone for good. As we stand in this moment, watching the cracks widen, the question isn't if more will come out, but who will fall next. Because every hidden message, every silent feud, and every sealed file is another thread in Hollywood's most fragile web, one that's now trembling on the edge of exposure. In the days following the courtroom chaos, Hollywood felt eerily quiet. Too quiet. The same industry that thrives on gossip, that lives for red carpet smiles and orchestrated leaks, suddenly shut its mouth. Publicists went dark. Studio executives refused to comment. Even journalists who had been fearlessly reporting every twist in the lively Baldoni saga began retracting statements or revising their earlier coverage. Something had shifted. Behind closed doors, powerful figures were making frantic calls, trying to understand how something so personal, so revealing, had spiraled into an industry-wide reckoning. It wasn't just about one lawsuit anymore. It had become a mirror reflecting how Hollywood has long enabled curated narratives, where image trumps truth and silence often buys survival. Justin Baldoni's refusal to back down wasn't just defiance. It was disruption. And Blake Lively's unraveling public persona became a warning of how fragile reputations can be when reality breaks through the facade. The fear wasn't limited to the courtroom. Insiders whispered that producers were pulling out of projects, endorsements were being quietly suspended, and even streaming platforms began revisiting contracts. It was the ripple effect nobody wanted to admit existed. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift's camp stayed noticeably composed, neither defending Blake nor attacking anyone. That silence spoke louder than any statement could. For fans and analysts alike, it was clear. Everyone was waiting to see who would make the next move. Would Blake's team push back harder? Would Justin go public with evidence that could destroy careers? Or would both sides agree to a settlement to protect what little was left of their Hollywood alliances? But one thing was certain. After this, nothing in the industry would ever be the same. The age of hidden deals and unspoken protection was being dismantled in real time. And this wasn't just a legal war, it was a cultural one. A battle between old Hollywood and the new, between silence and exposure, between the myth of perfection and the reality of consequence. And then, it happened. The calm before the storm shattered overnight when a new wave of leaks hit the internet. Screenshots, transcripts, and alleged voice memos tied to private conversations that no one outside that courtroom was ever supposed to see. It started on Reddit, as these things often do. A cryptic post titled, "You weren't supposed to hear this, but here it is," spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was everywhere: X, Twitter, Instagram stories, fan blogs, and even mainstream outlets who normally tread carefully around A-list reputations. The leaked materials hinted at something far deeper than the public had been led to believe. Messages that reportedly showed internal tension between Blake Lively and Taylor Swift's camp. Voice notes that captured conversations about controlling media narratives, silencing critics, and weaponizing PR strategies. One particular text, and if authentic, was devastating. A message allegedly from Blake expressing frustration about keeping the image intact when the truth is messier than anyone knows. That single sentence set social media ablaze. Suddenly, fans didn't know what to believe. The internet split in half, some defending Blake, claiming she was being unfairly targeted by a smear campaign, while others insisted this was proof of years of manipulation and power games behind the scenes. Major gossip outlets scrambled to verify what was real, what was doctored, and what might have been strategically leaked by one side to turn the tide of public opinion. And just like that, this legal drama evolved into something else entirely, a crisis of authenticity in Hollywood itself. Everyone was asking the same question. If these texts and recordings were true, what else had been hidden? How much of what we see, from interviews to red carpets to social media friendships, is actually real? Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni's team remained eerily composed. No denials, no outrage, just silence, which only fueled speculation that the leaks might have originated from his camp. But whether or not he had anything to do with it, the timing was surgical. The court of public opinion was already shifting, and Blake Lively's side of the story suddenly looked weaker than ever. By morning, hashtags like Gotcha Swift Leaks, Gotcha Blake Files, and Truth in Hollywood were trending worldwide. The entertainment world had never seen anything quite like it. The perfectly polished fantasy of celebrity friendships and media loyalty was cracking before everyone's eyes, and no one knew what truth would come spilling out next. When the leaks detonated across the internet, the fallout wasn't just loud, it was seismic. Within hours, publicists were in damage control mode, lawyers were exchanging urgent calls, and A-list group chats were imploding. Every brand tied to Blake Lively, Taylor Swift, and even Justin Baldoni suddenly found themselves in the crossfire of a storm no one saw coming. Luxury brands that once proudly featured Blake as the face of elegance began quietly scrubbing her from their feeds. Partnerships that had been celebrated just weeks earlier were now on hold pending review. One major cosmetics company reportedly paused a multi-million-dollar campaign featuring her image, not because they believed she was guilty of anything, but because the optics had become radioactive. Behind the scenes, Hollywood insiders whispered that certain friendships had already fractured. People who once stood shoulder to shoulder on red carpets and in carefully curated Instagram posts were now avoiding each other in public. There were rumors of group chats being deleted, of former allies unfollowing each other, and of publicists begging their clients not to post supportive comments that could backfire. And then came the betrayals. Sources close to the situation started leaking more information, not to expose, but to protect themselves. Agents, assistants, stylists, even PR staff began quietly talking to journalists, trying to distance themselves from the controversy. They wanted to make sure that when the smoke cleared, they weren't the ones left holding the matches. What made the situation even worse was how fast the narrative shifted. Blake Lively, once seen as America's polished sweetheart, suddenly found herself cast as the manipulative architect of a facade, the woman who built a perfect image on fragile ground. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni's stoic silence was being interpreted as integrity, a calm refusal to engage in theatrics. Even his critics had to admit, his restraint was powerful. But perhaps the most shocking reaction came from within Taylor Swift's camp. Insiders claimed that Taylor was furious about how her name was being dragged into this war, her texts, her privacy, her reputation all caught in the middle. For someone who controls her image with near-military precision, this was an unthinkable breach. There were whispers that she'd begun quietly cutting ties, instructing her team to distance her from the entire controversy, not out of disloyalty, but survival. And as Hollywood scrambled to choose sides, the betrayal deepened. Some of the very same outlets that once praised Blake began running headlines that questioned her motives, her PR strategies, even her marriage. "A turn in the narrative," one headline read. Another simply said, "When America's sweetheart isn't so sweet." Every story felt like a dagger. Every silence felt like an admission. And in that chaos, Blake's once loyal allies began retreating, not because they stopped caring, but because the industry had already decided it was safer to let her fall. By the end of that week, the story wasn't just about leaked texts or a courtroom battle. It had become a full-scale Hollywood reckoning, one that exposed how fragile celebrity loyalty truly is. Fame, as everyone suddenly remembered, isn't built on friendship. It's built on fear, favor, and who the public decides to forgive next. As the dust finally began to settle, one thing became painfully clear. Hollywood had just witnessed one of its most brutal unmaskings in recent history. What began as whispers about private texts and internal disputes evolved into a full-blown cultural moment, one that exposed the cracks running deep beneath the glamorous veneer of celebrity friendship, influence, and image-making. Across 7 parts of this story, we watched the rise and unraveling of an empire built on perfection. Blake Lively, once hailed as Hollywood's golden girl, found herself at the center of a media hurricane, not just because of what was said, but because of what it revealed. Every leak, every headline, every whispered rumor became part of a bigger story about power, protection, and the illusion of control. For years, fans saw Blake and Ryan Reynolds as the untouchable couple, funny, charming, deeply loved. But the moment controversy came knocking, that picture-perfect image began to fracture. It wasn't just about the legal battles or the public scrutiny. It was about how fast the same industry that celebrated her could turn cold overnight. Brands that once couldn't wait to associate with her now distanced themselves. Journalists who praised her image suddenly dissected it. And in that silence, the message was clear. Fame doesn't protect you when the tide turns. Justin Baldoni's role in all this became its own mirror of morality. While some accused him of using the situation to rehabilitate his image, others saw him as a man forced to stand in a storm he didn't create, one who let patience rather than PR define his next move. His silence, more than any statement, became its own act of power. And then there was Taylor Swift, the invisible name threaded through it all. Her reputation, her texts, and her private circle were dragged into a war she never signed up for. Even for someone as media-savvy and image-conscious as Taylor, this was a lesson in the high cost of proximity. Her quiet withdrawal from the situation wasn't disloyalty. It was survival. Because in Hollywood, distance is sometimes the only defense. But perhaps the real revelation wasn't about who said what or who leaked what. It was about the machinery itself, how the entertainment industry thrives on control and collapses when that control is lost. Every agent, every assistant, every PR manager moved like chess pieces, not for truth but for preservation. When things fell apart, loyalty became currency, and everyone had a price. The public, too, played a role. Every click, every repost, every speculation fueled the storm. The line between justice and voyeurism blurred, until all that remained was chaos disguised as commentary. By the end, Blake's story wasn't just about a scandal. It was a cautionary tale, a reminder that in the empire of illusion, image is everything until it isn't. Hollywood doesn't destroy its stars out of malice. It simply replaces them when the narrative demands something new. And when that happens, even the brightest lights dim, not because they burned out, but because the crowd stopped looking up.